Hey everyone, I am pleased to welcome Samantha Taylor today. Welcome, Samantha. Now,
Hi.
Samantha Taylor has been in a health and fitness industry for 29 years. She owns 4 personal training studios and is a former food addict, just like many of us. She started out with a food and sugar addiction during the beginning of her personal training career. And then 21 years ago, she figured out how to overcome her binging problem and food obsession, which led her to open 5 of her own personal training studios in Florida. She has had her own radio show, TV spot, and done over 300 seminars. Wow. Her specialty is teaching people how to transform how they think about food so they can see it change their behavior for life. So welcome, Samantha. I'm super excited about your topic today.
Thank you. I am too. I love talking about this.
Oh my goodness, so do I. And especially when it comes to transformation in terms of mindset. So your title, What Does Your Brain Have to Do with Weight Loss, is super intriguing. We're open ears. Tell us more.
Well, I can tell you that I have worked at this for many, many years. So I'm 47 now. I started really trying to get a hold of my eating, over 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And I found that I was developing a lot of emotional eating issues and habits as a child from abuse that I went through as a child. And then it got worse and worse and worse as I got older. So my emotional abuse eating now became into my adulthood, and I carried these problems with me. So what does your brain have to do with weight loss? Has to do with just counting calories and going on a diet and all of this stuff. 95% gain it back. We all know that, probably more. And that's such a sad, disheartening statistic. When you hear that, it's like, come on, well then forget it. I'm not doing anything.
Why even start,
but we
right?
also don't want to do that. Yeah, I know. It's just forget it. I'll just stay where I am. No, the consequence is too great for that. So we say, well, then what's not working? I think that part of it is that we don't work on the brain and the mind enough and address the true core essence of you that got you where you are. Because the person that got you where you are today is not going to get you out of where you want to go.
True.
And what I mean by that is the thinking patterns, the habits, all of that stuff got you where you are.
Yeah.
So how are you going to become a new person all of a sudden, like Cinderella, and the clock strikes and you're like this totally new person? We get so much hope when we read a diet book, or we're like, forget it. My doctor said I'm going to die if I don't get serious. And we get all focused and serious, but we make all these goals and we set all these things, but we forget that there's so many things to change that the brain cannot sustain that much change. It's not humanly possible. It's not how we work.
Right.
So that's where I started to realize, like, I got to start getting into the mind and understanding the mind and the brain connection to weight loss.
Man, that is amazing. So where does someone start? I mean, people, and I've said this many times during the summit, many people are like, it's all or nothing. And then they never start, or they quit very quickly.
And I tell you, if there's one thing you learn from anything, from me or him or anybody else, you got to get rid of the all or nothing mentality. That sets you up for failure. The only person in the whole world that's perfect is Jesus, and God. So no human being could ever be perfect. And one of the most disheartening things in life and most unhappy people I ever meet are perfectionists, because you set a standard that's so high that's not achievable. And I can bet there's a lot of people shaking their head going, yeah, I know. I tell myself I'm going to go do this, this, and this. I'm going to work out 4 days a week. I'm going to eat this good. And then what happens when you don't hit that mark? Now you start to fall off and you're like, well, forget it. I'm just going to eat 5 more donuts because I totally screwed up and I'm not going to the gym. That all or nothing, and I'm really glad you mentioned that, is probably one of the biggest sabotagers out there in people's mind with weight loss.
It's like you just said, well, I had a donut. Well, I already messed up, so I might as well have 4 more.
It really got my attention. So let me tell you a little bit about my previous food addiction.
Okay.
So I was a binger. A compulsive binge eater disorder I had, where most people would have to go to get some type of treatment I was so bad that I would literally eat 5 to 7,000 calories at a time, to the point where I could not stop until I felt
Oh my
nauseous.
goodness.
Now, most people will purge at that point, but God protected me from purging, and I knew enough about the body and the mind that if I went down that road, bulimia was a whole nother problem, and I just knew I could not cross that
Right.
path. So, and I know that statistically there's somebody watching this that's probably struggling with that. So that is one thing you never want to do for weight loss, is vomit
Yeah.
your food. So I would eat until I got sick physically. I was so nauseous I could not eat another bite. So that took about 5 to 7 calories. And I just started to really wonder, like, why can't I get this together? So when people say, oh, well, I know how to lose weight. So remember, I'm a health and fitness expert. Right. I had read probably hundreds of books. I had my own TV show, radio show. So if I can't figure it out, how is a person that doesn't know much about nutrition or calories or any of this stuff going to figure it out? I was around the gym 24 hours a day at my house and at my job. So it's so relative to say that just because you know of information, that doesn't matter. Can you actually live it and do it?
Yeah.
So I just really started to analyze, why do I struggle so much? Like, I should be able to figure this out. This is ridiculous. I was the #1 trainer in a gym out of 2,000 trainers, and it was at the height of my eating disorder. Right. So I really started to kind of analyze, okay, counting calories ain't cutting it. A diet ain't cutting it. It's too much. I can't do it. I have to start with the small improvements that I can work on. And one of those would be, I'm going to get a medium fry instead of a large fry.
Right.
Now, I know that sounds minuscule, but when you have been pegging out on massive amounts of calories, that is a big step.
Sure it is, yeah. Instead of a 24-ounce Coke, go down to 12. Eventually, you won't even need it.
More doable. Yeah, and it feels more doable. So, when I look back, I started to get myself fixed for like 5 years before I started really coaching other people at the levels that I do now. So I felt like I really needed to understand it, because it wasn't just a diet. It wasn't just like, oh, I want to lose 20 pounds, or, oh, I'm going to follow this plan. I needed to have a deeper reason of why I wanted to succeed. So I had to start getting into all the values and the mindset and the way I thought. And I realized that the person I was at that moment got me where I was. And if I wanted to become the new person, I had to learn how to think like her. Well, how does she think? I don't know, because I can't do it. So that's why you hire people, like you, or someone to help you, or me, because that's when you realize I need a new thinking pattern of how to really live this new lifestyle.
Right. They say the longest journey is from here to here. Now, because it's all information and it's all out there. Anybody can Google it. It's all there. But how did you get it from here to here?
Well, I'll tell you my personal story. I am a Christian, and for me personally, it had to be a deeper experience. And now, you may not be a believer, and maybe you can find a deeper experience in your family, or being there for your family, and not getting heart disease, and leaving your kids by themselves because you died of a heart attack, and now your kids are without a mother or father. I mean, find whatever moves you. For me, it was my faith, and I felt convicted that I was really in idolatry with food.
So it's your why, so basically. It's your why.
Yeah, for me it was that, and it was a desire to honor God and not be all jacked up in all these massive addictions with the temple that He says it is. So whatever your particular life is, you have to find what works for you, because what drives you doesn't drive someone else. And if we read a book and we're like, oh, yay, we're going to do this, but maybe that's not you. Maybe that's not how you work. Like, you've got to find out what works for you and customize a plan that's for you.
Absolutely. I mean, when I met with the nutritionalist, the first thing she said was, what do you like to eat? So I did a big list. She said, okay, I can work with this. We can work with this. I don't want you to do that.
What do most diet books say? Most diet books, they see your whole list and they say, you can't eat any of that
total
stuff
deprivation. And
And you're like, what? Like, this is my life. This is what I've been eating for 30 years. How can I not eat
Yeah,
everything you just said I
exactly.
eat?
Yeah. And she said, I want you to eat from all 7 food groups. Some things you shouldn't eat because, like processed meats have lots of other stuff in it. Once you learn the value of food, the fact is you can eat anything pretty much within reason as long as it's portion control and different things, and you can get healthy.
Now that opens a whole nother topic of a conversation.
Yeah.
How do we have portion control? So some people have triggers in their brain. If you have low serotonin in your brain and now you start eating and it's kicking off that serotonin, and maybe you struggle with depression and you're not on antidepressants, or you are, and now you have a brain chemical thing going on that it's almost like when I was binging, I could not stop. There was no portion control. I had none. So it's not like I could go, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. I'm going to eat, a small fry. That's a great idea. When I first started, I couldn't stop. So a lot of people might hear that and go, well, okay, well, that's good in theory, but how do you stop at 2 pieces of pizza instead of the whole thing?
I'm so glad you brought this up because, they say transformation is 90% in the mind or more, but the fact is we live in physical bodies and we've got all these chemicals. It's just like a cesspool of chemicals going all over the place, and sometimes it puts us into a state where, like you said, I have no control.
You literally don't. And then you feel like a failure, because then you're like, man, I said I was going to do this. And then what happens? Now shame and guilt kicks in. So when you have shame and guilt, what does that do? It makes you feel like a failure. So when you have condemnation, you perpetuate in that same level of emotion. So now you go binge more. Now you're like, forget it. I'm just a loser. I can't get this together. That's the mind babble that we say in our heads that keeps us down. And if we don't start analyzing those thoughts and analyzing how we perceive ourselves, relationship with food, how we deal with, the food that we choose to eat, and how we treat ourselves in our mind, that is so critical.
Wow. So when you said what does your brain have to do with weight loss? It's got a lot to do with it.
It has everything to do with it. I mean, when I answered that question, I'm like, everything.
But when you're in that state of uncontrol, which, you've got that happening, those chemicals going around, what would you tell somebody that they could do to pause that?
Well, the first thing would be to not set yourself up for failure. So I knew even when I was still a food addict, I could not go to buffets. Buffets were off the table for me. I knew it was nothing but a setup. If I paid $20, I was going to eat a lot.
Get my money's worth.
I'm going to get my money's worth. And there's all this fun stuff to eat that, I don't normally see. So many years before I even overcame my food addictions, I swore myself off from buffets. So you have to know your weaknesses. My weakness still today is events, like meetings, social gatherings where people are eating, because I'm like triggered psychologically, emotionally to want to feel connected and, by the food and stuff. So I still struggle in that area that I've got to really be on guard. The other thing that if you're in the midst of binging, there's behavioral specialists that talk about something called interrupting your pattern. So when you recognize you're in the middle, like, oh my gosh, like I'm about to eat 5 more pieces of pizza. Some people say, jump up from the table and scream at the top of your lungs, help me or stop. Now, obviously, if you're in a store, they might call the police. But if you're by yourself, it could work. I remember one time I was driving down the road. My biggest trigger was being in the car. I was triggered by fast food because I could do it in privacy. I'm a celebrity where I live. I have billboards, TV, radio, print. Everyone knows who I am where I live. So I can't go in public anywhere without someone recognizing me. So I binged in my car. So I remember one time I was driving to go get some donuts. And all of a sudden, so let's talk about how the brain works. You have a trigger. your brain starts to think, ooh, donuts, that sounds good. Now be careful here in this conversation because you might be thinking about that. But just control yourself.
Yeah.
So your brain gets triggered. You have a memory of the times you've eaten it before. And do you not start salivating a little bit, thinking about it? Go, oh, I'm even salivating right now. Do you know how long it's been since I've had a donut? So I was driving down this road. This was like literally over 15 years ago. And I was like, I'm going to go get donuts. And then all of a sudden, I just screamed out in my car, no, you're a liar. I mean, I was screaming at the top of my lungs. And it just like shocked me back into reality. Because I kept telling myself, oh, just this one more time. That is such a lie.
Yeah. Wow. You know, when I decided to have this transformation in my life, just before I made the decision to do that, man, so many thoughts went through my mind. Like, okay, this is the day when I'm going to go to a buffet. I'm going to just binge out on everything. And because tomorrow it's
last rites, right?
Exactly.
Oh man,
I just admitted that.
I did that all the time. And you know, that was some of my big binges, was when I would tell myself the lie, this is the last time you're going to do that. I think the other thing, I'm glad you mentioned that or pointed that out, you need to know the lies that you tell yourself that set yourself up for failure. Because my lie was, this is the last time. So I would go all out. One night I ate over 10,000 calories in sugar, cookies, cake, and brownies. I made it all in one night. And I ate almost all of it.
Oh my goodness.
And the day I realized, you ever had those moments where you realize, man, I got a problem.
Yeah.
Those moments. The next day I had woken up. I had brownies on the counter that I had left over. I wasn't able to finish all of them. Well, I pulled off the cover and there was ants, fire ants, all over the brownies. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was going to have my last morning after my last night of binging on the rest of these. Like, I panicked. I took these brownies out to the grass and I'm like scooting these red ants off these brownies. They're biting my hands. My dogs are like running around. And I'm thinking, could you imagine if the neighbors got this on video and like they posted it on social media? Like, who's this health expert in the grass, fighting red ants for her brownies? So I realized at that moment, I have got a problem. Yeah. Not only are my hands on fire, but I was going to eat those brownies that had those ants all over it. That's disgusting. Like, you just have those moments where you come to yourself and you say,
it's almost like God sent those ants so that you wouldn't do it, but then you were just going to do it anyway.
Yeah. Even the prodigal son in the Bible, when he ran away and spent all his money and he was in the pig slop, the Bible says he came to himself and he realized what he was doing. Right. So that's what I want to ask you, who's ever watching. What pig slop are you in? Not to, say the thing from a pig. I'm talking about mud and swallow and degradation, or out in the yard, getting burnt, bit by ants and struggling. What pit are you in that you need to come to yourself and realize, how long am I going to continue like this? I've got to stop this and get this under control. Absolutely. You got to shake yourself off and wake up and say, if I don't do something, this is going to get bad. I mean, it's real. You know that with disease and all these other problems.
Oh, definitely. And it's not just weight related, folks.
No.
It's in every aspect of our lives. We all have something that we need to overcome and we need transformation in. Wow.
Right.
You know what? This has been absolutely amazing, Samantha. You've got so much there. We're coming to the end of our time already, and I'm like, wow, where'd the time go?
How did that happen?
I know.
Hey, time flies.
So if there's one last thing that you just really encourage people just now, which is great, but if there's one more last thing that you'd like to just let them know, what would that be?
You can do this.
Yes.
One of the biggest things with people that have lost weight and gained it is they feel like a failure, that they can't just get it together. And what's one more diet? What's one more try? I can't gain 30, 40 pounds again and lose it again 3-4 more times and be seen in front of all my friends and family. I mean, part of the thing to start over and transform is you've got to just shake it off and just say, all right, I can start again. Maybe I haven't tried this whole brain thing that she's talking about, or all the other amazing speakers at this summit. There's answers. There's a solution. Don't quit. That's the biggest thing. Don't you give up, because you weren't put on this earth to just suffer and die. You were put on this earth for a reason.
Yeah.
So I just encourage you to believe
That's
that.
awesome. And find community. We all need support. Don't suffer in silence. Because how many times, I'm 60 years old now. How many times did I suffer in silence? Tried to do it myself without telling anyone, because for fear of being judged, or, it's just another time. But there's awesome people out there, like the folks that are at this summit, these special speakers, and Samantha. And you know what? Community is where you need to be. And like a coach, hey, I'm not a good match for every single person as a coach. I realize that, and I'm good with that. But that's why I'm partnering with other speakers, because, hey, Samantha might be the person that's the best person for you to partner with in your journey. So consider it. We need that help. We need that support. And we know you can do it. Absolutely. Hey, listen.
Accountability, I've helped over 7,700 people lose weight, 64 tons of fat. If you don't have accountability, that's probably one of the biggest things that we think we're going to make all these changes, but are you really doing it? That's the key to it.
It is. Wow. Thank you so much, Samantha. Listen, Samantha's got a free gift for everybody that attends the summit, and she'll explain a little bit about what that is.
Yes, so I put together a PDF of something called Train Your Brain, or Train My Brain, which is your brain. How do you train your brain? I wanted to give you specific things that you can start doing, small things that are simple, that you can say, wow, I could start to see I could actually improve. Just pick one thing to improve on a week. Imagine if you did that in 52 weeks, how many things in your life would be different?
You got to get that, folks. You got to get that. Anyways, listen, thanks again, Samantha. And thank you, everyone, for taking this time with us today. And have a wonderful day. And we know you can do it.
Bye-bye.